Can you hear me all right? Okay. Thank you, thank you, Mo, for the kind introduction, and thank you for your legacy of running towards those in need in times of crisis. Amazing tradition, and it's always a privilege of the San Antonio Food Bank to partner with them. We were gearing up this last week, and thankfully we were not called on directly, but indirectly we're now supporting those impacted by the storm in Houston. And thank you all for your support of us as we're able to make sure that we have the resources to meet that need. Yeah. Can you guys, you guys hear me all right? Sorry. So I am known for this joke that was shared to me by one of our incredible volunteers. The food bank has about 2,000 volunteers that come each week to make a difference, and one of them is 84. He likes to work in the warehouse packing boxes, and then before he leaves, he stops by my office and shares a joke or two, most of which are incredibly inappropriate, but we just kind of let him get away with it. But he asked me one day, he says, what does volunteering and wetting your pants have in common? I nervously shrugged, and he just says, well, everybody sees you doing it, but only you get the warm feeling. Service is an incredible tradition that is your San Antonio Food Bank, and I do believe that in this time of such significant mental health stress around the world, that selfless service is one of the antidotes to kind of address that mental health. And so it's incredible to see all ages and all abilities come serve at your San Antonio Food Bank. We've really worked to engage our whole community around service, and it's a powerful thing to witness. So, as was mentioned, I've had this privilege of working in the space of food banking for over 30 years, and I don't know that I knew what I was getting into in the beginning. As Anna said, I was a young entrepreneur. I had a small business, and then because of a life crisis, started to question who I was and what I was supposed to do, and sold my business, and then leaned in thinking that I could maybe help and make sure that those that are hungry are nourished. And it's been this amazing journey with lots of struggles and trials, but it was, now I know, preparing me for the storms that we would see ahead. And it's been a few years since I've been out to speak to you all, and I was thinking about that as I was driving over, that just before the pandemic, and who would have thought that our economy and community would unravel as quickly as it did. We typically have our food distributions and feed, prior to the pandemic, about 60,000 people a week throughout 29 counties here in Southwest Texas. And it takes a lot of food to meet that need, and so we're working to procure it. But as the virus started to spread, and as the economy started to be impacted, our Riverwalk economy, the hospitality community, everything shut down, and we found ourselves at our food distributions that typically would see 200 to 400 families. We started to see 2,000 to 4,000 families, and some of you might remember we were about 3 weeks into the pandemic, about the time when most people's last paychecks were spent. H-E-B and Walmart struggled with supply chain disruptions and the inability for even those with money to be able to find the groceries in the grocery store. We were at a swap meet down south, Traders Village, if you've been there, a large parking lot that they were not using because of the pandemic. They had shut down, but it was just the space that we would need to make sure that we could get food to families. And therein on that day, 50,000 families came. It was the largest food distribution in the United States. And there was a aerial photo that was taken from a local photographer for the Express News named William Luther. And he captured that image that ended up on the front cover of the New York Times. And you could just imagine, I'm just this kid from Texas just trying to make sure people get some food, but all of a sudden my phone rings and it's Dr. Phil. It's the Today Show, and they want to know, what are you doing? And why is that line so long? And literally 70 different countries across the world had me, unfortunately, talking to them about what the pandemic was going to mean about meeting people's basic needs, food. That all of us need it, right? And if you just take a minute, just think about this amazing lunch that we've enjoyed and the power of food, what it does for us, as it nourishes our bodies, but it nourishes our spirit, our soul. It's tradition, it's culture, it's mom's recipes, it's grandma's recipes, it's dad's early morning breakfast. It's all of that amazing nourishment that food gives us, and that when you're without it, you not only lose the nourishment of the body, but the nourishment of the soul. And the privilege of just being able to provide those ingredients that gather people around a dinner table. I grew up watching my mom cook, and oftentimes I was doing my homework at the table, and I can remember my grandma in the kitchen and all those incredible conversations. And I know each one of us are enriched when we're enjoying a meal in good company, and truly food is love. So that privilege is ours, should we take it. And I want to thank the Kleins and the tradition of support that comes here from you all. We would not be able to do our mission of now feeding 120,000 people a week. You heard before the pandemic we were feeding about 60,000. That number quickly went to 120,000 and dropped as the vaccines came out, but then as the economy has just been struggling. And some will say, what do you mean it's struggling? I don't know what's going on, but I can tell you that the line is still long, that families share with us the inability to stretch their paycheck over their expenses. Housing eats first in every home. Housing is the biggest expense, and when rent takes what it takes, it just doesn't leave anything left for food. Texas is hot. Utilities are high, and the cost of food. I like to think of a household budget just getting, just robbed from, adjusted, and food is that variable expense. And I say, I like to think like, man, would there ever be a day that food would come first off the budget, right? We'd make sure we're nourished first, and then with whatever else we would pay our bills, but it's the other way around. People pay their big bills first, and then what's left over, they buy food, and there just isn't anything left over, and so they rely on us. When you think about those individuals and families that are coming, hunger in our community is biased to females. It's more often a female that we're nourishing. She's a Latina, and she's a mom, and she's working. She just isn't making enough. And when you think about all the expenses she has, this is a little bit of a trick question, but that long line of cars, of all the vehicles, any type of vehicle, What do you think costs more post-pandemic than before the pandemic? Which vehicle ended up costing us all more? As you think about that, I'll give you the answer. The vehicle is the shopping cart. 36%, right? Food. So if you had $100 on food before the pandemic, you're now spending $136 just to have the same food in the grocery cart. That has been so impactful. I read an article the other day that talked about fast food as a luxury. Think about that. For an average family of four, $50. There is no more a dollar menu, right? And so for that single mom trying to feed her kids, oftentimes it was the dollar menu that would fill in a hectic schedule where time is so valuable, that convenience, not necessarily the most nourishing, but it was a belly filler, but now a little bit out of reach. And so we're seeing the effects of that in the line that we're feeding. So I wanted to share with you a little bit about our strategy. We literally collect food from the field to the dinner table. Any food that is potentially going to go to waste, we've got strategy to recover it. So we're mostly working farms. About 40% of what we distribute is fresh produce, and it's produce that is grown, but it doesn't meet the market specs or requirements, maybe oversized cabbage, or we're talking at the table about carrots. Mr. Klein, he loves carrots. He's a big, he can't, never met a carrot he didn't love. So, we keep that food, those produce items, from literally getting turned back into the earth or taken to a landfill. And so it's an incredible recovery and food rescue. We also work with food manufacturers and great grocery retailers like HEB that has food that they're going to sell, but maybe because of an expiration date or a best if used by date, we're able to get that food and get it to neighbors in need. And then restaurants, hotels, caterers, places that prepare food to be eaten and it's not, we rescue those leftovers. We love non-perishable food items. Thank you so much for collecting some food for us. Those items come in food drives, and that represents about 3% of our total volume, and it's a big, meaningful percent because we don't know what we're going to get when we get it in food drives. We get some really great items like that peanut butter. Peanut butter still is our #1 needed item. We feed a lot of kids. It's a great shelf-stable protein, and in a lot of our homes, it's an older sibling that's preparing a meal for a younger sibling, and you don't have to turn on the stove or anything to make a PB&J sandwich. So thank you for that. We have some creative strategy and wild game. Some of you might know we have a program called Hunters for the Hungry, where we process that incredible natural resource into lean protein for families in need. And so hunters and ranchers throughout South Texas donate their deer to us, and we train in butchery. My staff always gets mad when I say that, but I know most people think of it as butchery, but it's actually now the politically correct term is meat carving. So I guess those mob guys, the mob guys made butcher a bad term. I don't know, no one wants to be Joey the Butcher. So, but it's a very meaningful job, and is actually an occupation that's very threatened. Depending on where you shop, there's very few meat departments anymore. Walmart has a consolidated strategy, so you don't see a butcher shop at a Walmart, but you do still see them at HEB. And so we're privileged to partner with them, and individuals that come in to get food are taken through a 3-step strategy that we call food for today, food for tomorrow, and then food for a lifetime. We really believe in the power of work and really want to meet people's food needs today with groceries or meals. But then our food for tomorrow work is about household stabilization, and food for a lifetime is about workforce development, job training, and job placement. So we do a lot around that and helping people increase their income through more meaningful, sustainable employment. And so some of them that lack skills can get skills in our training programs or in our partnership. We partner with so many great organizations, and so we really want to move people to self-sufficiency and self-reliance. So literally, your San Antonio Food Bank is giving the fish while teaching how to fish, but I tend to think of it that she would love to learn how to fish, but she can't. Her babies are hungry. And so unless you pack a tuna fish sandwich, she won't meet you at the dock, right? It's that challenge, right? When you've got a household to run, it's got to be strategic, it's got to be holistic. It can't be an or, it has to be an and. Dr. Mike Flores is a good friend, the chancellor at Alamo Colleges. He would say the competition for his students isn't UTSA or any of the universities, but it's poverty. Poverty takes more people out of the classroom than anything. And so we have staff from the San Antonio Food Bank now at every Alamo College to make sure that families, students are given access to food scholarships so that we can make sure that they are nourished and stay in the classroom to graduation, to more meaningful employment that ultimately takes them out of our line that you all saw on that photograph. So I'm going to stop talking because I know you have questions. Hopefully that gives you a little bit of an update of what we've been up to and how we work. We're super committed to be the most efficient nonprofit on the planet. My staff hear me say that all the time, and but I grew up with the philosophy that my parents taught me and my grandfather taught me, that we squeeze the buffalo off the nickel. We want to make sure that that we're efficient. And so as a young entrepreneur, I knew I was taking money from investors, venture capitalists that wanted a return on their money. And as I came into nonprofit work, I realized it's very much the same, that I was going to return on investment, healthy returns. It didn't go back to the investors, but went to the community. But the best thing I could do is have the lowest administrative overhead that I possibly could obtain. And the food bank runs on about 2%. So 98 cents out of every dollar goes directly to programming. And they're just, there's lots of great nonprofits worthy of support. But there's just not a nonprofit that's operating at that level of efficiency and able to deliver for $1 still 7 meals. Even in this inflationary environment, we've really worked hard to adjust and continue to deliver for those that invest in us. And I can just promise you that we will always be a good steward over your precious gift. And so thank you. All right, what do you want to know about the food bank? Yes. Mo's coming up. Hang on.
Eric, first, thank you for what you do and for being with us today. My church is a distribution center, and I've handed out some carrots as big as watermelons. I asked our directors that hey, he's going to be here. Is any question that you would like me to ask him? They said yes. Their understanding is that you are expanding your service area, and you've mentioned the increasing need, despite you would think it'd go down, but it's up and it's stayed up. We're servicing maybe 350, 375 families each week. Their concern is, how are you going to keep up with the demand if you're expanding your area of service? How are you going to be able to service or provide product? We do what we can, but how are you gonna keep that, the supply available to meet the demand?
Yeah, so great question. Wow. You have to keep the faith. I think that is the answer. That phrase, no good deed goes unpunished, right? And so there are 200 food banks across the United States, all a part of a national organization called Feeding America. And there's a little food bank that was struggling in San Angelo, Texas, that had a service territory of about 13 counties. We had a long history of serving 16 counties, and over the pandemic, that food bank in San Angelo just struggled, and so we had a decision to make, and that was, could we help Texans throughout the high hill country, along with those here in South Texas. And it was a need that we needed to respond to, and so we've doubled down. It would take more food to meet that need, and I'm proud to say that we are increasing year over year our volume of food. Last year, we just finished our fiscal year, which is June 30. So July 1, where the rock is at the bottom of the hill again, but we did about 75 million pounds last year. This year we did 85 million pounds, so a 10 million pound increase. And we really see sites at 90 for the next 12 months and potentially to 100 million pounds in our FY27. So I know food is out there. What I need is money to get it. So it really is a fundraising challenge, and the value is in that $1 equals 7 meals or 10 pounds of food. So there is still a tremendous amount of food that goes to waste. It's just having the financial resources to send the truck, to bring the truck in. We import food from all over the world into San Antonio. The food is oftentimes donated, or it is at a very low cost. So we work with farmers on what we call pick and pack out fees. So that farmer, if they harvest the crop, they're gonna pick everything that they know is gonna sell. But they could pick that oversized, undersized item, but they worry, hey, if it's not gonna sell, I can't continue to lose money. So we backstop them and say, hey, can you guys hear me? Sorry. So we backstop the farmers and cover their costs for picking and packing out that food. And there's hundreds of millions of pounds still left on the fields that we can't afford to support the farmer to pick. And so in a short answer, it's faith. It's the belief that we're going to be able to gain the support financially to be able to recover the food that will meet that increased demand.
A quick follow-up, what can we do to help people here in this room?
Just get the word out. I mean, the 4 things that we need: food, time, money, voice. Thank you for serving. Thank you for all of y'all for your service to our incredible country. And boy, the 4th of July, our freedoms, not taking anything for granted. So grateful. But volunteer, right? At a local food pantry or at the food bank. That helps me squeeze the buffalo off the nickel, right? We run more efficiently. We've got some incredible programs. We've got some trustees. These are gentlemen that made an error or two. They're currently serving some sentences. They're all nonviolent offenders. But I've got 40 guys that work for me that are on a work release program from the Texas Department of Criminal Justice. But that's just an example of how we run efficiently. We're training them on forklifts and material handling equipment while serving their sentence, so that when they get out, they can get jobs that can hopefully provide for them, and not how they were providing before they got caught. And but it helps me run an efficient organization, right? That's 40 guys that are not on the payroll. But voice, so food, time, money, voice, food, like this food drive, y'all, thank you for supporting us financially, but raising your voice, use your social media. If you're on Facebook and you say, man, this crazy guy came and spoke today at a luncheon, he said some things that was interesting, tell the story, right? Public policy, reach out to elected officials, the importance of making sure that those that struggle have federal programs that support them. The need for good health insurance, right, for us all, super important. But prayer, raising your voice, on behalf of those that struggle, I think is a great thing that we can all do. So.